Good day, everyone. This is CP105, Assessment of Learning 1. Our lesson for today is Module 4, Development of Classroom Assessment Tools. The learning outcomes of this chapter. At the end of the chapter, you should be able to first define the following terms: clarity of the learning target, appropriateness of assessment tools, the term validity, reliability, fairness, objectivity, comprehensiveness, ease in scoring and administering, practicality and efficiency, table of specifications, that is with S on the last part of the word, matching type of test, multiple choice test, true or false test, completion test, objective test, subjective test, STEM, distractors, key points. Learning outcome number 2, we have to discuss the different principles of testing and assessing. We have to identify the different qualities of assessment tools, identify the different steps in developing test items, because one of your output for this module is for you to construct different test items, and you have to of course show it to other group of people, and then they have to answer the test items. 5, discuss the test items in developing table of specifications. Of course, you will know here the importance and then the function of table of specifications when you are to construct test items. And of course, what is really the reason why we really have to construct table of specifications first before we construct the test items. Number 6, construct a table of specifications using the different formats, because I will be introducing you to the different formats of a table of specifications, although technically we really don't have any specific format of your table of specifications. We just have to make sure that the purpose and then the mechanism of doing your table of specifications should be presented. Number 7, discuss the different format of assessment tools. Again, since one of the highlights activities of this module is for you to create different types of assessment tools, I will be discussing here the different format of assessment tools. Number 8, determine the advantages and disadvantages of the different format of test item. It is because we really have to understand that our test items or assessment tools, they are not perfect, and we cannot have a perfect and then perfect assessment tool. We just have the term appropriate assessment tool. Therefore, we have to identify the advantages and disadvantages of these test items so that we can use them in appropriate way. Number 9, identify the different rules in constructing multiple choice test, matching type test, completion test, true or false test, and the last one, we have to construct multiple choice test, matching type test, completion test, true or false test. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we have discussed the process of developing instructional objectives. As discussed, the instructional objectives must be specific, measurable, and observable. Teachers must develop test items that should match with the instructional objectives appropriately and accurately. Yes, we really have to. That is why if we are going to construct our test item, the teacher should go back to the instructional objectives, because the one who will dictate the tenor or the mode of your assessment, it will be stated in your instructional objectives. So ang nilagay dito, instructional objectives appropriately and accurately. I have here 5 general principles of testing, and these are very important. The 5 general principles of testing, these are according to Abel and Fresby 1999, sorry, cited by Garcia 2008, listed 5 basic principles that should guide teachers in assessing the learning progress of the students and in developing their own assessment tools. These principles are discussed. So the first one is, of course, this is the rule of thumb when we are to construct test or testing, measure all instructional objectives. That is why we really have to go back. We have to check our instructional objectives, no? Because sinasabi ko nga on the previous slides, no, nasabi ko na that if we are to construct our assessment tools, it should mirror the instructional objectives. It should reflect whatever stated in your instructional objectives. And then of course, if you write as a teacher, if you write in your lesson plan several instructional objectives, it should be reflected to your testing or to your test or exam or assessment. So when a teacher constructs test items to measure the learning progress of the students, they should match all the learning objectives posed during instruction. That is why the first step in constructing a test is for the teacher to go back to the instructional objectives. Again, that is a golden rule and then the rule of thumb before we are to create our assessment tools. We really have to go back to the instructional objectives. The second one is cover all the learning tasks. In your lesson, you have several sets of learning tasks, no? Probably nagpa-role playing ka, and then siguro nagpa-laboratory ka for that particular a particular topic. All of the things inside your lesson should of course cover in your testing, no? You should not make an exam or you should not make an assessment na hindi siya part sa tinatawag natin na learning task or even outside sa tinuturo mo, no? We really have a very sad story, no? The picture of a college environment or in ang sabi nila, there are really teachers, if they are to instruct, no? Sabi ng teacher, we will be having our exam next meeting, study chapters 1 to 5. And then during the exam, ang lumabas lang na exam is chapter 1. So that is a big no-no for the principle of testing, and that is again not valid. The teacher should construct a test that contains a wide range of sampling of items. In this case, the teacher can determine the educational outcomes or abilities that the resulting scores are representatives of the total performance in the areas measured. The next principle is the use of appropriate test items. Of course, that's I think I did mention or discuss the learning outcomes that we really have to I have to discuss the different assessment tools, and I will also discuss the advantages and disadvantages of these tools because in every lesson, ang sinasabi ko nga, we can't find a perfect tool or assessment tool, but we can find appropriate assessment tool. No? So the test items constructed must be appropriate to measure learning outcomes. The fourth one is make test valid and reliable. So for this particular discussion, meron na tayong um, a little glimpse of what is really valid, what is the term valid, what is the definition of valid, and what is the definition of reliable. So the teacher must construct a test that is valid so that it can measure what it is supposed to measure from the student. So ano ba ibig sabihin or when can we say that a test is valid? No, technically, when it comes to content, kung ano yung nilalaman ng lesson, if whatever the content of the lesson and those contents are reflected sa tinatawag natin na test item, the test is valid. No? Sa ginawa kong example kanina, I did give you an example na wherein ang teacher nag-instruct siya na the coverage of the exam for next meeting is chapters 1 to 5, and then ang nigawa sa exam is chapter 1 lang. That is not a valid exam. Okay? Now, when we say reliable, according to here, the test is reliable when the scores of the students remain the same or consistent when the teacher gives the same test for the second time. No? There are really exams na ang nagagawin ni teacher kung gusto ni teacher na malaman ang reliability or ang consistency ng content ng exam or assessment tool, all they have to do is to administer the same test, and let's try to look at the scores of the students. If you're going to compare the two scores there, no, na kay set of scores sa letter A and then sa letter B, and then you would, if you would notice na the same or meron siyang consistency sa scores nila, meaning to say the exam is reliable. I hope you get it. No? The last general principle we have is use tests to improve learning. I think this is one of the one part of the discussion of your um, module one, wherein we did really define what is assessment, evaluation, and test, and what are the purposes of those terms. No, of course, the main reason why we have to administer test is to, of course, to improve learning. No, how can we improve learning? Of course, the test can give you feedback. No, and then because of that feedback, the teacher may change the platform of discussing the lesson. And on the other side, sa students na side, pwede na because of that feedback na nanggaling sa test, siguro ma-encourage yung estudyante na to do more or to do best. Okay. The test scores should be utilized by the teacher properly to improve learning by discussing the skills or competencies on the items that have been learned or mastered by the learners. So those are the 5 general principles of testing. Once again, measure all instructional objectives. The second one is to cover all the learning tasks. Third, use appropriate test items. Four, make a test valid and reliable. And the last one is use tests to improve learning. Next, we have here the principles of high quality assessment. This is very literal, no? When can we say, or how can we project a high quality assessment? Assessing the performance of every student is a very critical task for classroom teacher. Yes, very critical, no? Why critical? Because we have to improve, no? Again, the main reason why do we have to administer tests is to improve learning. That's the main reason. Teacher-made tests are developed by a classroom teacher to assess the learning progress of the students within classroom. So when we say teacher-made tests, those are tests na literally that a teacher is being constructed, no? Perhaps hindi perfect ang exam because that is teacher-made test. Kulang siya ng mga technicalities na sinasabi natin. The strengths of a teacher-made test lie on its applicability and relevance in the setting where they are utilized. So, ang ibig sabihin ng third bullet natin, children, is that the strong point or the strongest point of a teacher-made test is the applicability and relevance. No, pag sinasabi natin applicability, of course, the lesson is all about multiplication. Si teacher gumawa ng exam or ng quiz about multiplication, no? So when it comes to applicability, perfect yung tinatawag natin na teacher-made test. Pag tinatawag nating multiplication ng topic, multiplication din yung quiz that is also relevant to the topic. Therefore, those are the major strong points of a teacher-made test, no? When it comes to applicability and relevance. Of course, when it comes to weaknesses, sinasabi ko nga, when it comes to weaknesses sa part ng teacher-made test, kulang siya sa tinatawag natin na technicalities, no? Compared to standardized tests, those standardized tests, they undergone a lot of or series of testing, series of validations and reliability tests and so on. That is why natawag siya na standardized test, no? This is very in comparison with teacher-made test, very different, no? So when it comes to technicalities, kulang yung teacher-made test, but when it comes to applicability and relevance, ay perfect si teacher-made test. Next, okay, test constructors believed that every assessment tool should possess good qualities. Yes, no, because Assessing the performance of the students in the classroom setting is very crucial, very technical, very detrimental. That is why we really have to understand that assessment tools should possess very good quality. So high quality assessment, kumbaga. Validity and reliability are the most common technical concepts in assessment. We will not dig in validity and reliability here because we have a separate discussion on validity and reliability, and there are we will be encountering calculations when we get there. No, that is basic statistics, no, for validity and reliability. Assessment should be carefully developed so that it may serve whatever purpose it is intended for, and the test results must be consistent with the types of assessment that will be utilized. So kung titingnan ninyo tong third bullet, ang ibig sabihin ng third bullet is all about validity and reliability. No? Assessment should be carefully developed so that it may serve whatever purpose that is when it comes to validity, and the test results must be consistent, and that is when it comes to reliability. Okay, so the first principle of high quality assessment is the clarity of the learning target. Since sinabi ko nga that when we are to construct our test, no, or assessment tool, we really have to go back. That is the rule of thumb, that we have to go back to our learning target or learning outcomes. Therefore, it is quite imperative for us to look at the quality of the learning target. It should be clear, no? It should be specific. That is why when it comes to the clarity of learning target, we will be encountering the term SMART. So when a teacher plans for his classroom instruction, the learning target should be clearly stated and must be focused on student learning objectives rather than teacher activity. Again, the focus is the students, not the teacher. The learning outcomes must be SMART. So when we say SMART, that is specific for letter S, measurable for M, letter A for attainable, R for realistic, and T for time bound. Okay, so those are the characteristics of a very clear learning target. The performance task of the students should also be clearly presented. No, basi ang lesson is all about multiplication, and then the learning task is dancing. The teacher should, I do not know. Okay? So hindi natin alam kung ano nangyari sa teacher na yan. Next, the teacher should also discuss clearly with the students the evaluation procedures, the criteria to be used, and the skills to be assessed in the task. That is why if you're going to notice with your teacher, every time there would be performance task, every time there would be task, no, inside the classroom, yung teacher talaga natin binibigyan tayo ng information on how you to grade. For example, okay, you will be graded if you sing this one properly, you will get this percentage, somewhat like that. Okay? So kumbaga, merong tinatawag na criteria for judging, no? So I think na nakita niyo 'yan. Okay. Next, the appropriateness of assessment tool. Again, kailangan talaga nating intindihin that appropriateness of assessment tool is very necessary. It is because we are to assess the performance of the students. No, if we can get an appropriate assessment tool, therefore we cannot assess appropriately the performance of the students. The type of test should always match the instructional objectives or learning outcomes of the subject matter posed during the delivery of the instruction. Okay, and that is again the rule of thumb. No, very basic. No, parati natin yung maririnig when it comes to assessment of learning, because that is really true. That our test should match the instructional objectives. Okay. Next, teachers should be skilled in choosing and developing assessment methods. Dapat alam ni teacher, no? Kaya nga pumasa siya ng let, no? Dapat alam niya how to choose or anong dapat piliin na assessment method. alam niya dapat kung ano yung tinatawag na appropriate assessment method. At at the same time, yung teacher natin dapat alam niya how to construct assessment methods. Because kung hindi nila alam yan, hindi ko alam kung ano yung teacher ninyo. Okay. So the first one, when it comes to how to identify if the assessment tool is appropriate, we have to go back to the term objective test. Okay. So we have I have here different types of tests. This is very general, no? So the first one is the objective test. It requires student to select the correct response from several alternatives or to supply a word or short phrase to answer a question or complete a statement. So that is an example of an objective test. Please take note of the description of your objective test because I might give you a task that you are to find or to construct an objective test. And for the objective test, it includes the true false, the matching type, and then of course the multiple choice questions. Again, sa objective test, nire-require mga estudyante to select the correct response. To select the correct response, therefore isa lang ang tamang sagot. Kahit sino yung mag-check ng paper, the same pa rin yung scoring procedure. Okay? So that is when it comes to objective test. The word objectives refers to the scoring. So, ibig sabihin, kahit si Ma'am Lian Kimada yung teacher at saka si Sir Jezreel Martinez yung teacher, and then the same yung exam na kanilang i-check, the same pa rin yung scoring procedure because the test is an objective test. Okay? Next is a subjective test. It permits the student to organize and present an original answer. Okay. This is now the time that your ideas, your ideologies, no, you can actually use that when you answer your test. That is subjective test. It includes either short answer or long general questions. Kung sasabihin siguro natin ng subjective test, siguro ang magandang example niyan would be essay. Okay? You would notice that in answering an essay, this type of test has no specific answer. Okay. Wala siyang tinatawag na specific answer because again, this is subjective test. Now the problem of subjective test now is when it comes to the scoring procedure. Okay, so when it comes to the scoring procedure, so because this is subjective, that is why kung titingnan natin yung example dito, it is scored on an opinion basis. And because of that, we really have problems on checking our subjective test. No, for us really to be guided and then to minimize the term biases, we have to be clear with the what you call this rubric or a scoring sheet. No, ang ginagawa ko every time I will be checking essays, hindi ko talaga tinitingnan yung pangalan because that could give me a certain bias, and that's the time that my scoring procedure or my scoring will be affected. And that is really true because again, since the test is a subjective test, the opinion of the students will be contaminated with your ideas. No, siguro merong ideas yung may estudyante na hindi mo bet. Na kasi nga hindi mo bet, so instead of giving her or him a perfect score, siguro ang binigay mo is 0 because you have different ideas. No, then that is not okay. Next is a performance assessment. Students are asked to perform real-world tasks, and the tasks are very authentic kasi nga they are real-world tasks. Very good example, perhaps, is role-playing, conducting a seminar, conducting a research forum, for example. It can measure learning objectives which focus on the ability of the students to demonstrate skills or knowledge in real-life situations, also laboratory performance. Another thing we have is the portfolio assessment. This is so nice, no? Because the portfolio assessment, you could actually see the differences along the way, no, of the performance of the students, and that is very nice. No? So assessment based on the systematic longitudinal collection of student work created in response to specific known instructional objectives and evaluated in relation to the same criteria. Hindi naman lahat ng performance task na may estudyante will be collected when it comes to portfolio assessment. No? Meron lang mga specific assessment that the student must be collected, and then it will be run through along the year, and then titingnan ng teacher yan if meron bang pagbabago. No? That's actually the purpose of the portfolio assessment. Okay. And then we also have here the oral questioning. Um, Itong oral questioning, binibigyan siya ng konting attention. It is because most likely in a one setting, marami nang tinatawag na questioning or recitation. No? So collecting assessment data by asking questions. The most commonly used of all forms of assessment in class. Yeah, yeah, kasi nga binibigyan natin siya ng konting importance. It is because bugbog na tinatawag natin na asking questions, no? The most commonly used of all forms of assessment in class. The ability of the students to communicate orally is very relevant to this type of assessment, a form of formative assessment. Please take note that oral questioning is a form of formative assessment. I think one of the essential part for me, or the importance of oral questioning, is you can actually get immediate feedback coming from the students if the students really understood what you are discussing or not. No, like for example, you discuss about the different types of matter, and then you ask somebody to rephrase what is matter again, and then if that particular student can rephrase the definition of matter in such a manner, meaning to say you could get a feedback that the student is really listening, and the student really understood the topic that you discussed. No, very nice. Okay. Next, we also have here the observation technique. The observation technique also is very common for teachers, pero hindi masyadong nahalata ng mga estudyante na ginawa nito ng teacher. The teacher will observe how students carry out certain activities, either observing the process or product. I think you can notice this when you will be having your laboratory activity, now wherein your teacher will roam around the classroom and then try to talk to you, and then after some time the teacher will write something out there, no, that is actually part of the observation technique. There are two types of observation techniques. The first one is the formal and informal observation. Let's try to look at the differences of the two. Okay. When we say, by the way, when we say formal, ito yung um, prepared tayo. Like for example, reporting. Okay, that is a formal observation. Pag sinasabi natin informal observation, the typical one, no? Like for example, my groupings, my group activities, and the teacher rooms around the classroom. That is an example of informal observation. Okay. The last one is we have self-report. The responses of the students may be used to evaluate both performance and attitude. This is true, no? Because I really did practice this to my major subjects, especially if the subject, kung meron siyang laboratory na integrated, meron talaga akong tinatawag na peer rating, and that is an example of self-report, no? Sa peer rating, they have to evaluate themselves, and then the members of the group will evaluate the specific member also. Now, this is very nice because you could actually evaluate both the performance and then the attitude at the same time of the member of the group and the whole class. Assessment tools include sentence completion, Likert skills, checklists, or holistic skills. Next, we have is the different qualities of assessment tools. Again, nandito pa rin tayo sa tinatawag na principles of high quality assessment, focusing on the different qualities of assessment tools. And we will start with the term validity. I think I did mention already what is validity, no? Refers to the appropriateness of score-based inferences or decisions made based on the student's test results, the extent to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure. If the test now na-measure niya yung supposedly kailangan niyang ma-measure, meaning to say the test is valid. Again, an example is your topic or the lesson is all about multiplication. If the teacher constructed an assessment tool or test related to multiplication, the test is valid. Okay, so that is the focus of validity. Next, the term reliability again, it refers to the consistency of measurement. That is, how consistent results or other assessment results from one measurement to another. No? Kung meron kang the same set of exam, and then you administer that the same group of students, and then they got most likely the same scores, meaning to say the scores are consistent, therefore the test is reliable. So when it can be used to predict practically the same scores when tests administered twice to the same group of students. Okay, next is the concept of fairness. This one I also love this. The items should not have any biases. No? It should not be offensive to any examinees or any, I think it is examinee or subgroup, no? To any examining subgroup. And then, tests can only be good if it is fair to all examinees. Like for example, um, when we are to construct our exam, that is why siguro no nga in a test paper, marami tayong um, different type of test item. Meron tayong tinatawag na multiple choice, meron tayong siguro ang part 2 mo would be enumeration, part 3 is matching type, and then part 4 is true false, and then part 5 is essay. This particular type of assessment conforming to the term fairness. No? Kasi nga, not all students are good on multiple choice. Not all students are really good on essays. No? That is why dapat fair yung tinatawag natin na exam. It should not be discriminating. Hindi siya discriminating. Okay. Next is objectivity. Agreement of two or more raters or test administrators concerning the score of a student. Lack of objectivity reduces test validity in the same way that the lack of reliability influence validity na. So again, when we say objectivity, ito yung agreement of two or more raters. Like for example, again, let's go back to Ma'am Lian Kimada and Sir Jusrel Martinez. For example, they agreed that this is the scoring procedure. No, that is the scoring procedure. And then the lack of objectivity now, kung hindi siya, kung wala siya tinatawag na objectivity, it reduces now the validity of the test. No? Kasi nga probably hindi siya appropriate, no, yung tinatawag. In the same way, if the test is not valid, it also lacks reliability, no? Yung tinatawag natin. So that is when it comes to the concept of objectivity. Next, we also severe scorability. It means that the test should be easy to score. Hindi siya complicated. No? Direction for scoring should be clearly stated in the instruction. That is why, as a future teacher, you really have to use common words. You really have to create or construct your direction in which your students could really understand. No? So dapat specific siya. And then of course, the scoring procedure should be reflected also. Provide the students an answer sheet and the answer key for one who will check the test. Next we have is adequacy. The test should contain a wide range of sampling of items to determine the educational outcomes or abilities. Ito yung sinasabi ko na in an exam, dapat marami kang tinatawag na coverage, no? So like for example, the coverage is chapters 1 to 5. Dapat adequate yung questions na yung coverage should be in chapters 1 to 5, no? Hindi pwede mas marami yung tinatawag natin na chapter 1 kasi mas bet ni teacher, or doon tayo mas maraming questions sa chapter 5 kasi yun yung alam ni teacher. Okay, so dapat when it comes to the concept of adequacy, we really have to construct test items that is meron siya tinatawag na wide range of sampling items for all the coverage. No? also have is the second to the last is administrability. The test should be administered uniformly to all students so that the scores obtained will not vary. So this is now the problem of the teachers, no? No? Ito yung problema. Because there are really students na every time they will be having their exam, there are a lot of excuses. But technically, when you are to administer your exam, it should be administered uniformly. Dapat tanan sila, no? Lahat sila, they will be taking the exam. Okay. Because probably um, if you cannot do it uniformly, there could be a lot of chances that the scores obtained of the students will vary, will not vary, sorry. There should be a clear provision for instruction for the students, proctors, and even the one who will check the test or the test scorer. When it comes to administrability, no, sa mga teacher made test, wala tayong gaanong problema kasi nga si teacher lang naman yung nagbibigay siya lang yung gumagawa ng exam. Si teacher yung nagbibigay ng instruction sa exam, si teacher din yung nag-check ng exam. So probably hindi siya gaano problematic when it comes to administrability. Now, the problem now is when it comes to technical exams or standardized tests. No? And that is the other way around. The last one, when it comes to different qualities of assessment tools, we have is practicality and efficiency. Teachers' familiarity with the methods used, time required for the assessment, complexity of the administration, ease of scoring, ease of interpretation of the test results, and the materials used must be at the lowest cost. Um, when it comes to methods used, dapat alam ni teacher kung ano yung ginagamit niya. No, siguro ang gusto ni teacher, okay, when I will be constructing my assessment, gusto ko na yung first part talaga would be multiple choice, and then gusto ko na ang last part talaga ng exam would be essay. Okay, that is part of the methods, no? And then time required for the assessment. Now, this is really the most of the problems of teachers, especially for those teachers na wala silang units from education because they really don't know the concept of time, no, sa tinatawag nating assessment. The exam is good for 1.5 hours, but the content of the exam is good for 2 days. Anong nangyari sa teacher? Nakainom si teacher? Okay. So, hindi pwede. That is why you really have, as a teacher, by the time you will be constructing your assessment, you have to know that the substance are already there. No, lahat ng kailangan nandoon sa exam na tinatawag. But the time should be specific, no? Kung ang exam ay tinatawag natin na 1.5 hours, therefore, you have to make an exam that is good for 1 and 30 minutes. Correct? Okay. Next is the complexity of the administration. When it comes to standardized tests, no, if you encounter different standardized tests and any exams, meron talaga silang process when it comes to administrating the test. So, ang gagawin lang natin para naman walang magiging problema when it comes to taking the test, we have to minimize the complexity of the administration. No? So, siguro meron lang papel, okay, get one and pass, and then blah, blah, blah. That's it, no? Siguro wala na tayong mga paligoy-ligoy pa, no? So, this is to minimize the problems when it comes to complexity of the administration. Next is ease of scoring. Dapat meron tayong mechanics as a test constructor, as a teacher, meron dapat tayong tinatawag na scoring procedure para naman by the time you will be checking your quiz, hindi magiging hassle for you, no? Because by the time we will be constructing an assessment, the appropriate way dapat is maibalik yung mga assessment sa mga bata para naman alam nila kung ano yung magiging score nila. Okay. Next is the ease of interpretation of the test results. Okay. If there is a ease of scoring, there should be ease of interpretation of the test results. And then the materials used must be at the lowest cost. This is when it comes to practicality. I hope you understand the concepts that we discussed on the different qualities of assessment tools. Next, steps in developing assessment tools. The first one, of course, is again, paulit-ulit tayo, no? The first one is we have to examine, we have to go back to our instructional objectives of the topics previously discussed. Okay? And then right after one, we have to make our table of specifications, wherein I will discuss it later, how to construct your table of specifications. And then we have, right after constructing your table of specifications, this is now the time that we are to construct your test items, appropriate test items, and then assemble the test items. Check the assembled test items. Yes, because baka merong mali. No? Kailangan talaga nating i-check yan. No? Hindi talaga biro yung pag-construct natin ng assessment. Next, you have to create or write your directions. Again, when you are to write your instruction or direction, it should be specific and very clear. Make the answer key, and of course, analyze and improve the test items. So those are the basic steps in developing assessment tools. Okay. Now let's proceed to the construction of the table of specifications. This is very important. That is why titingnan natin kung paano to magawa, because this is very essential when you are to create your exam or test. Okay, so this is very basic. Wherein every time you will be constructing your quiz or your test, you really have to construct your table of specifications first. Again, that is table of specifications with S. Kung walang S sa last word ng specification, that is wrong. Okay, so as you can see sa table natin, meron tayong 4 or 5 columns. The first column, that is for specific objectives. Second is the cognitive level, type of test, the item number, and then of course the total points. For you not to be confused by the time you will be constructing your table of specifications, you have to make sure that the number of items is also the number of points. Okay? Like for example, meron kang, okay, please number your paper from 1 to 100. Okay? Because we will be having a test which is 100 items. Somewhat like that. Okay? Kasi nga, by the time you will be constructing a TOS, and then merong isang item doon na good for 5 points, medyo magiging problema yan by the time you will be constructing your table of specifications. Okay. So, dapat yun yung magiging reflection na tinatawag. Okay, that is the other way. So the first one, no, for you to construct your table of specification, the first step is selecting the learning outcomes to be measured. So again, before we construct our table of specifications, go back to the instructional objectives, try to look at, and then that's the time that you have to write it sa first column natin. That's a specific objectives. The second one is make an outline of the subject matter. Okay. The third one, decide on the number of items per subtopic. Fourth, construct the format. And the last one is construct the test items. Now I will show you how to construct your table of specifications. Okay, so how to decide on the number of items per subtopic? Now, for example, you have 5 topics and then yung isang topic ninyo, for example, meron tayong photosynthesis. Ang nilagay sa formula, number of items is equal to number of class sessions multiplied to the desired total number of items, take note, divided by the total number of class session. So meron tayong example dito, the number of item for the topic, synthetic division. Okay, so the topic is synthetic division. Please take note of the formula. Number of, I will be using my laser. Okay. Okay. Can I write? Okay. Wait. I'll erase this one. You can. Okay. Let's try to look at. I actually wanted to find my. Okay, anyway. So we have here the number of item for the topic. The topic is all about synthetic division. Okay. The number of class session discussing the topic, synthetic division, class session. Sir, ano pong ibig sabihin ng class session, sir? Oras po ba yan? No. Ang ating tinatawag is the class session. Regardless of the time. Like for example, kasi meron tayong problema kasi because there are schools na yung klase nila is good for 1 hour lang. There are schools na 2 hours. Ang gagawin natin is per class session. Okay. So class session, okay? So, sir, how about sir, yung klase po namin is 1.5 hours and then once a week lang po kami mag-meet, sir. So 3 hours. That is, I think that is equivalent to two class sessions. Okay, so that is how you identify the number of class session. So meaning to say, in discussing synthetic division, 3 class session yung naging na-consume. Okay, and then, the desired number of items ni teacher, gusto ni teacher gumawa ng 10-item quiz. So, ito yung desired number of items. Total yan. And then, total number of class session for the unit. Siguro, kung titingnan nyo yung lahat ng mga diniscuss ni teacher na topic, ang total number of class session is equivalent to 10. Okay. You have to plug in it here. Therefore, the number of class session discussing, we have 3. Desired total number of items, 10 items kasi yung gagawin ni teacher eh. No? Sa lahat ng exam, no? And then total number of class session, 10 din. Okay. So you have to compute now. We have 3 times 10. That is 30 divided by 10. Okay. Next, these are, by the way, the different formats of your table of specification. Okay. This is the format 1. The other one, yung ginamit natin kanina, that is the format 1. Okay. Yung ginamit natin kanina, that is format 1. I think format 1 is very easy, no, to construct. And then the upper portion, that is the format 2, format 2 of table of specifications, that is the one-way table of specifications. And then the below one, that is what we call the format 3 of tables of specifications. We call it two-way table of specifications. Now, sir, ano po yung best na table of specifications? Again, I cannot recommend you the best table of specifications, but you can use different format. The most important thing there, dapat ito lang na part dito, it should be reflected, no? Ito, mga content na ito. And then the class sessions, these are very important, class sessions, the number of items, and then extra na po itong tinatawag ng cognitive level, no? And then your task item distribution. Those are the important part. So how to identify the cognitive level? For example, you have here, for basic concepts of that particular topic, meron kang 2 items. Nilagay mo yan sa number 1 and 2. So, ang ibig sabihin, ano ba yung si number 1? Is si number 1 ba is application? So, you have to write number 1 here. Meaning to say, if you're going to interpret the table, question number 1 is an application level of cognitive level. Sir, how about number 2? Nilagay po dito yung number 2. Okay. Number 2, meaning to say, the question number 2 is part of HATS. No? Okay. What is it? Again, I'll be giving you different samples of your table of specifications. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. No? Okay. This is the example, sample, the table of specifications that I used during my PSI days, no? So ito yung format ng table of specifications sa the Philippine Science High School, Zamboanga Peninsula Region Campus in Dipolog, because I am a special science teacher there for 1 year, no, way back 2018 to 2019. So this is now our format of table of specifications. Kung titingnan ninyo yung sa PhilSci ng mga estudyante, it is is really required na if we are to construct test items, dapat yung test items namin, mas marami talaga tinatawag na 70%, mas marami talaga yung tinatawag na higher order thinking skills. No? Kahit grade 7 ka, you will be encountering exam na maraming higher order thinking skills. Because, of course, the main reason why they constructed Philippine Science High School for us to produce scientists and mathematicians, no, in the future. And that is very understandable. So again, if you're going to look at, we have the basic components of your table of specifications. We have the content or the desired learning competency. Sir, pwede po ba na ilagay yung mga topics? Yes, para naman hindi masyadong maraming susulat dito sa first column natin. And then right after the content or the desired learning competencies, we have here the number of points children try to look at. And then we also have here the number of classroom contacts. Sir, paano po malaman yung number of points? Okay, the number of points. Remember, we have our discussion how to identify the number of items. You just have to use that formula for you to identify the second column. Okay. Next, right after that, you have here the number of points, no? Dito sa second column, the number of points now will be divided. Hindi naman technical or hindi naman literal divided. Meaning to say, we have to identify the percentage, no? The percentage kung ilan yung papasok dito sa lower order thinking skills at saka sa higher order thinking skills. Please take note that lower order thinking skills covered remembering, understanding, and application. Okay, this is very shocking, no? Because according to my understanding, problem solving, by the time you will be computing, like for example, the topic is business math, no, business mathematics, and then your instructor Jezreel Martinez, no, discuss about ano ba yan, profit, na for example, commission or whatsoever, and then binigyan ka ng isang problem and you have to compute it. Hindi yan tinatawag natin na HATS, no? So, computation that is still part of the lower order thinking skills, specifically part of application. Okay. So, di ba very stressed na tayo computing our math formulas, but computing our math formulas that is still part of the lower order thinking skills, specifically application. Okay. Next, another example we have, this is the table of specifications that I used during my DepEd days in the Pitan City Sulungon National High School. Yes. We also have here different format. Again, sinasabi ko talaga, we don't have a very specific and then very technical na format of your table of specifications. Dapat siguraduhin lang natin yung mga pinaka-importanting parts ng table of specifications that should be reflected. Okay. Let's note that the number of items for each level will depend on the skills the teacher wants to develop in his students. No? Kung titingnan natin yung example kanina, I have example from Pisay, no? Mas marami yung HATS compared to LATS. And then sa DepEd naman, nag-vary talaga. Okay. In the case of tertiary level for college, no, please take note because you are college students, the teacher must develop more higher order thinking skills questions. That is why hindi pwedeng ma-shock, no? Hindi kayo pwedeng ma-shock kung bibigyan kayo ng mga very technical na mga assignments ng mga teachers ninyo because that is a requirement as a tertiary level student. Number 2, for elementary and secondary levels, the guidelines in constructing tests will be as stipulated in the DepEd Order 33, series of 2004, must be followed. So try to browse DepEd Order 33 series of 2004 and you would notice the differences of the varying levels of exam na dapat nating gawin kung ilan talaga yung porsyento, no? So that is, when it comes to numbers, factual information should be 60%, moderately difficult or more advanced questions, that is 30%, and HATS 10% for distinguishing honor students. So that is the distribution of the cognitive levels sa tinatawag nating elementary and secondary levels. Again, 60% for factual information, moderately difficult or more advanced question for 30%, and HATS question 10% for distinguishing honor students. Next, let's try to discuss the general guidelines for constructing tests. This is according to Kubizin and Boric 2007. The first one is we have to begin writing items far enough or in advance so that you will have time to revise them. And this is very important. No? So kung alam natin na yun na yung coverage ng exam, that's the time that you have to construct your TOS for you to construct then your test item. Second, match items to intended outcomes to appropriate level of difficulty to provide valid measure of instructional objectives. Limit the questions to the skill being assessed. This is very understandable, no? That of course our test should match our intended outcomes or learning outcomes at appropriate level. Number three, be sure each item deals with an important aspect of the content area and not with trivia. Now, there are students really na para lang makagawa ng questions, they will be creating items more on trivia. They are constructing items not relevant to the topic, no? Meaning to say, we really have to focus more on the content area, not on trivia and so on. Number four, be sure the problem posed is clear and unambiguous. Meaning to say, dapat klaro and then hindi vague and then of course very specific. Okay. That is why by the time you will be constructing your test items, you have to use common terms, common language, and then the direction should be clear and specific. That is a golden rule, no? Next, be aware or be sure that the item is independent with all other items. Ibig sabihin, di ba yung mga teachers natin, meron silang tinatawag na, okay, meron silang techniques na sinasabi na if you can answer number one, perhaps you could answer number two, something like that. So to make sure that we could cover the content, no, when it comes to validity, no, in terms of technicalities, dapat independent yung mga items natin. Item number one should not be a reason for you to answer number 2, 3, and 4, and so on. That is a very bad test item. The answer to one item should not be required as a condition in answering the next item. A hint to one answer should not be embedded to another item. So if there are items na ginawa ng mga teachers ninyo, that is a faulty test item. Number 6, be sure the item has one or best answer on which experts would agree. So again, number 6 is very crucial, no? Be sure the item has one or best answer on which experts would agree. Dapat alam natin, no, kung by the time you will be constructing your answer key, dapat ano yan, no? Yung tinatawag natin na research mo talaga, and then alam talaga ni ng expert. Number 7, prevent unintended clues to an answer in the statement or question. This is very funny, no? By the time you will be reading a question, there are what we call grammatical inconsistencies wherein yung teacher natin hindi niya na parang nakaligtaan niya yung, of course, especially if the student knows grammar, no? 'Di ba merong mga exam or test item na merong a or an, no? Of course, if that is meaning to say, ano yung karugtong na word? If a cottage, meaning to say the first letter of the next word is a consonant, no? And then if you have an there, so when it comes to grammatical inconsistencies, if you have the word an, meaning to say the first word or the next word, the first letter of the next word is vowel. Like for example, a blank, and then alam mo na meron letter C, a cottage, no? So you would notice the letter C here is consonant, no? And then an apple, Okay, meaning to say that the second word, the first letter of the next word is a vowel. So dapat alam natin, that is why you would notice sa mga exams na naka-slash ito, no? A slash an, no? To prevent unintended clues or hints. Next, number 8. Avoid replication of the textbook in writing test items. Do not quote directly from the textual materials. Siguro yung mga teachers na tamad na sila gumawa ng exam, they will verbatimly write kung ano yung nasa, o kukopyahin, they will verbatimly copy whatever the contents na nasa libro. No? And then because of that, alam na talaga ni estudyante, no? So that alam na ni estudyante yung sagot, especially if the students really read the book. You are usually not interested in how well students memorize the text, and that is correct. So by the time you will be giving them handouts, for example, do not use verbatimly the words there, no, sa inyong handouts. You have to rephrase it or reconstruct the sentence and then use it as a question, no, for that particular test. Besides, taken out of context, direct quotes from the text are often ambiguous. Yes, that is true. If you're going to verbatimly copy the text sa book, you cannot really create a very clear question, no? Kasi nga, kinopia mo lang yung nasa libro. Okay. Next, number 9. Sorry. Next we have is determining the number of test items. So titingnan natin, I think the numbers presented here are based on some researches and consistencies, no? So consider the following average time in constructing the number of test items. The length of time and the type of time used are also factors to be considered in determining the number of items to be constructed in an achievement test. We really have to take note for this, future teachers, no? Dapat tingnan natin yung average time to answer for a specific assessment format. Okay. The number of items included in a given assessment will also depend on the length of the class period and the type of test items. The three bullets here discuss the construction, perhaps they discuss the construction of your, what you call this, table of specification. So this is very understandable. So let's try to look at now the table presented sa presentation. No? We have two columns here. We have assessment format for the first column, the second column for the average time to answer. For the assessment format, please take note that according to here, again, this is not constant, no? So pwede ito mag-vary, but siguro hindi masyadong malayo sa value na tinatawag natin or pinakita na sa presentation. For true false, dapat 30 seconds yung average time to answer for the true false. For the multiple choice, 60 seconds, no? And then for multiple choice of higher level learning objectives, like for example, multiple choice yung assessment format, but the question is on HATS. So we will give them additional 30 seconds and that is equivalent to 90 seconds. No? For the short answer, like for example, we have to define photosynthesis. That is an example of short answer. That is 120 seconds. Completion, very good example of completion sequence identification, perhaps, no? And that is also 60 seconds, and then matching 30 seconds per response. Yes. Okay. Short essay, 10 to 15 minutes. Again, for short essay, that is 10 to 15 minutes. Extended essay. Now, pag sinasabi extended essay, that is very open. Like for example, what are your political ideas or political ideas, somewhat like that. So that is extended essay. That is good for 30 minutes. And visual image for 30 seconds. So please use this time. Siguro you can play with the numbers here, but hindi siya masyadong malayo sa numbers dito. So try to make an exam and then pwede siyang ma-match dito. Okay? By that, if you are to follow this one, you could actually give justice to the exam, no? Sa length of the exam. Okay. Next, these are the checklist, yes, for constructing your test item, no? Pwede ninyong maging guide ito. No, though we have how many statements? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. We have nine statements here, and then you can use this by the time you'll be constructing your test. This will be your guide, okay? The next part is the we have to assemble now the test item. So by the time we are done constructing your test item, we are now ready to assemble the test items. Sir, what do you mean by assemble the test items? This is now the time that you are to I think this is now the time that you are to package the test and then they reproduce the test. After constructing the test items, following the different principles of constructing test item, the next step is to consider is to assemble the test items. There are two steps in assembling the test. We have packaging the test and reproducing the test. Okay. First, group all test items with similar format. Siguro nakagawa ka ng mga 10 items na multiple choice. So, ilagay sa isang format. Arrange test items from easy to difficult. That is, again, the rule of thumb. If you are to create your test item, number one should be the easiest question. Okay. Number two should be easier. And then sorry, meaning to say we have easy, yes, and then the last should be pa difficult na dayon. So again, when we are to arrange the test items that is from easy to difficult. Okay. Hindi pwede ma-difficult. I think the purpose of arranging the test items from easy to difficult is not to discourage the students, no? Because by the time if your topic is physics or the subject is physics and then sa una pa lang na question is kuwan na, problem solving, yung estudyante mawawala na yung gana in answering the test item, no? So we will give them a parang boost of self-esteem wherein lalagyan natin sila ng mga three questions na easy questions for them, no? That is why the arrangement should be easy to difficult. Okay. Next, space the test items for easy reading. This is really true, no? Dapat meron yun siyang spacing, siguro mga 1.5 or something like that, no? Dili yun siya single spacing because the purpose here is for the students to read the test questionnaire easily. And yung gagawin ni teacher, kasi nga nagtitipid si teacher, grabe yung font size, naging 10 na yung font size, nataka 2 columns pa, yung margin nakaganito pa, so hindi na masyadong na klaro. And then i-photocopy pa ni teacher, ay good luck. Okay. Next, keep items and option in the same page. In the rule of constructing test items, if you have number one there and you have four options A, B, C, D, and then kahit yung letter D nandun na sa next page, that is a faulty test item. Dapat lahat talaga ng option is on the same page. Okay? Kung meron mang maputol, find a way na lahat talaga ng options ay doon sa ay tawag natin to the same page. The rationale of that is for the students to consistently analyze, no, the options, no, kasi parang maputol by the time magbabasa yung estudyante ng scenario, no, and then reading the different options, and then merong maputol, meaning to say it could actually give them inconsistencies of analyzing the options. So it could perhaps a factor bakit maging faulty or maging mali yung sagot ng estudyante. So to make sure, no, and then when it comes to consistency and fairness, dapat lahat talaga ng options should be on the same page. Okay. Next, place the illustrations near the description. Yung iba talaga may mga teacher, siguro, merong mga problema, no, sa formatting na meron kang picture, yung picture is for number 10, nalagay siya sa number 20. Ay, paano yan? Okay, so that's really a problem. So you really have to format your test exam, your exam, in such a way that if you have illustrations should really near sa tinatawag nating description. Next, you have to check the answer key. Dapat alam natin yung sagot. No? if you have difficulty on confirming the answer, you have to search on that multiple times para naman makita talaga natin na yun talaga yung tamang sagot, okay? And of course, decide where to record the answer. So this is on the part of the assemble the test items. Next would be, okay, so right after assembling the test items, let me check because I double click the presentation. Yes. So right after assembling the test items, we are now ready writing the directions. Again, when you are to write directions, it should be specific and very clear. Baka yung mga teachers kasi, no, kasi magaling sila sa English, yung gagamitin nila ng mga lingwahe or mga terms, words in giving the direction, yung mga very complicated. Now, when you are to write direction, how can the students now understand your direction if you're using very complicated words? No, that is now the problem. So that is why if we are to write direction, since this could affect now the answer of the students, we have to use common words as much as possible. Next, check the assembled test items. Yes, kasi nga baka merong mga multiple choice na nandun pa sa ano ba yan, sa tinatawag natin na essay. Okay, so we really have to check on that. Next, of course, make the answer key, analyze and improve the test items. Kasi nga, siguro right after administering the test, and then makikita mo na parang yung mga estudyante hindi nila gaanong nasagutan properly yung exam, and then most of them are not following instructions. Siguro may mali talaga sa totality ng exam mo. That's the time that right after you get back the test questionnaire, the answered test questionnaire, you really have to analyze and of course improve your test item for further administration. Different formats of classroom assessment tools. So we have here, I think, one, two, yes. No? So we have different types of classroom assessment tools. We have mainly two, the selection type items and the supply type items. Let's try to look at the main difference of the two by giving you an example. Okay, so when we say selection type, also known as objective test items. So don't forget the objective test na discuss natin kanina. Okay, it requires students to select the correct response from several options. Meaning to say, when we say selection type, meron lang isang tamang sagot. May pipiliin dapat na tamang sagot. Ay, sorry, hindi talaga isang tamang sagot. Meaning to say lang, ibig sabihin, pag sinasabing selection type or objective test items, meron dapat pipiliing tamang sagot. Okay, and then also known as objective test item. Yes, and then selection type items can be classified. Example for this, multiple choice. If you would notice, meron tayong best answer for multiple choice. We have also true or false. The answer should be either true or false, or interpretative exercises, and of course, objective test item requires only one correct answer in each item because in the selection type or objective test item, students are to pick correct answers from several options. So that is the main feature of your selection type or objective test items. Next. So here are now the kinds of objective type tests. Let's run through first multiple choice test. Okay. So your multiple choice test used to measure knowledge outcomes and other types of learning outcomes such as comprehension and applications. Yes, you could actually yung ginagawa during my college days, instead na purely calculations yung sa physics namin, the test item is on multiple choice pero they will be calculating, no, they for them to pick an answer. So that is part of applications. You could actually create a HATS question using multiple choice test, but very challenging. Okay. Next, it is the most commonly used to format in measuring student achievements at different levels of learning. Kasi nga, itong multiple choice test natin, we can create questions in different cognitive levels. MCQ consists of three parts: the stem, the key, and the incorrect options or alternatives. And we call them distractors or foil, no? Ang stem, yung question mismo. The key, meaning to say the correct answer. And then the distractors, yung tinatawag natin, yung mga maling sagot. Okay. Now, if as a teacher, dapat alam natin, no, kung paano pumili ng options. Kasi nga meron tayong problema, no, because I got to read or read any mga different type of MCQs, and then meron talagang problema sa tinatawag natin na question or options. Like for example, the answer for that particular question is a color, no? So for example, the answer is green, no? So letter A is green, and then letter B is apple. Letter C, laptop. Letter D, scissor, for example. No, letter A is a color, mean to say green, and then letter B we have a laptop, for example. You would notice na kung titignan niyo yung apat na examples natin or apat na options, iba-iba silang, iba't iba yung characteristics or feature nila. No, the correct answer is a color. Now, the problem here when you are to construct your distractors, you have to pick distractors na dapat distractors talaga. If the answer, if the correct answer for that question is a color, therefore all options should be color. If the answer for that item is a name, therefore all options should be names. Diba? If the answer is a type of computer, for example, or a part of a computer set, therefore the options should be part of a computer set, not of a plant, for example. No? If the answer is an organ of humans, you should not include organs coming from plants. That is now the problems of writing MCQs no sa tinatawag nating distractors. Kasi yung ibang teachers really, susulat lang sila ng mga distractors para lang makagawa ng distractors. But by the time they will be doing that, mas nakikita ng mga estudyante kung ano yung sagot. Correct? Okay. Again, please take note, if the correct answer is a color, dapat lahat ng options should be colors. If the answer is an organ of a human, therefore all options should be organs of a human. Okay, do not include anything. That is the best distractors. Okay, next. Okay, so this is now the general guidelines in constructing your multiple choice test. The first one is make a test item that is practical or with real world applications to the students. Ito yung challenging part ng mga ng mga teachers, no? Technically, really, and this is really true, teachers really don't really want to create multiple choice test or MCQ. Because ang hirap gawin ng MCQ, but the nicest thing of MCQ is ang dali niyang i-check. A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, and so on. But when we are to construct it, very difficult. No? It is really time consuming and very tedious. Number two, use a diagram or drawing when asking questions about application, analysis, or evaluation. Now, for us really, no, to inject the different cognitive levels, if we are to proceed to application, yung mga analysis na tinatawag natin, yung tinatawag natin evaluation, siguro pwede tayong magpakita ng diagram or drawing, and then let them decide for that particular. Like for example, meron tayong table, meron tayong data sets, and then they have to interpret what's inside. That is actually analysis or evaluation. Number three, when asked to interpret or evaluate about quotations, Present actual quotations from secondary sources like published schools or newspapers. This is very understandable. No? This is now the role of the teacher to quote. Number four, use tables, figures, or charts when asking questions to interpret. Yes, again. Number five, use pictures if possible when students are required to apply concepts and principles. That is really true also. Okay. So that is for MCQ, for the multiple choice test. Let's try to look at here the MCQ. Okay, so the first, and of course the next one we have is you have to list the choices of choices options vertically, not horizontally. Kasi yung iba, ang ginagawa ng mga teachers, they are writing the choices options horizontally, no? So vertical siya pag ganyan. Next, avoid trivial questions. Yes, because the main reason why we have to avoid trivial questions because our main purpose of designing the instrument or assessment tool is to, of course, assess the learning of the students. Now, if you're to write trivial questions, how can you assess now the performance of the students? Correct? Number eight, use only one correct answer or best answer format. Yes, dapat hindi yung letter A at saka letter B yung sagot. Okay, yun yung tinatawag. Next, number nine, use three to five options to discourage guessing. Huwag naman yung sobrang maliit lang. Huwag naman yung sobrang dami, no? Kasi nga, if there would be very little na option, and then kung marami din, ang gagawin ngayon ng mga estudyante, they will guess now. Nawawalan sila ng gana. Okay, and that is really true. Now for the next item, number 10, be sure that distractors are plausible and effective. So yun yung na-discuss ko kanina. Kung ano yung dapat characteristics and appropriate and best distractors. 11, increase the similarity of the options to increase the difficulty of the item. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa distractors. Number 12, do not use none of the above options when asking for a best answer. Yes, that is really true. That is why we really have to minimize the usage of none of the above because we are, especially when you are asking the best answer. And the last one, avoid using all of the above options. Ito yung gagawin mostly ng mga teachers, no, na siguro talaga sila na tinatama na sila gumawa ng dapat na distractors kaya yung gagawin na lang all of the above na lang. Okay. Okay, so here are now the guidelines in constructing the STEM. The STEM should be written in question form or completion form. Okay. Do not leave the blank at the beginning or at the middle of the STEM when using completion form of a multiple choice type of test. So again, mali po yung if you're constructing a STEM sa multiple choice nauna po yung blank. For example, blank is the process of that is a faulty test item. Or photosynthesis is blank yung blank naman ay nasa gitna ng sentence and that is wrong. So I mean to say the blank should be left on the last part of the sentence. The stem should pose the problem completely. The stem should be clear and concise, yes. Avoid excessive and meaningless use of words in the stem. That is why we really have to use common words, very specific and very clear. State the stem in positive form. Avoid using the negative phrase like not or except. So, yun. Nilimit natin yan. Underline or capitalize the negative words if it cannot be avoided. So, kung meron ka talagang not or except, so yun yung nakikita natin sa mga exams na naka-underline siya. Yung iba naka-capitalize pa. This is really to emphasize that the sentence is on the negative phrase. Okay. Number 7, avoid grammatical clues in the correct answer. Pag sinasabing avoid grammatical clues in the correct answer, yung a at saka an. Next, these are the guidelines in constructing the options of your MCQs. The first one is there should be one correct or best answer in each item. Ito yung tama, no, for MCQ. Number two, list options in vertical order, not a horizontal order beneath the stem. Again, vertical order siya, hindi pwedeng horizontal order. Number three, arrange the options in logical order and use capital letters to indicate each option, such as A, B, C, D, and E. So naka-capital letters. No overlapping options. All options must be homogeneous in content to increase the difficulty of an item. Number six, as much as possible, the length of the options must be the same or equal. Avoid using the phrase all of the above, yes, and avoid using the phrase none of the above or I don't know. Okay, I think this is the last part of the discussion, no? So we will continue na dayon. So next is the guidelines in constructing the destructors. So the first one, the destructors should be plausible. The destructors should be equally popular to examinees, to all examinees kan. Ano? So dapat kung kulay yung sagot, dapat kulay lahat. Number three, avoid using ineffective destructors. No? Replace destructors that are not effective to the examinees. Dapat alam natin yan. Each destructor should be chosen by at least 5% of the examinees, but not more than the key answer. Revise destructors that are over attractive to the teachers. No, they might be ambiguous to the examinees. Okay, so let's try to look at the different examples of multiple choice items. Number one, the most stable measures of central tendency. As you notice na yung this is a knowledge level, meaning because the question is all about basic idea or definition or factual information. Okay, so you would notice that the underline or the blank nasa last na ng sentence. Okay, so this is a completion type of step of your step. Next, which of the following statements describes normal distribution? If you would notice, the question is in a question form. Take note also that the items are written in vertical position. No? Number three, what is the standard deviation of the following scores of 10 students in mathematics quiz 10, 13, 16, 17, 19, 20, 20, 20, 25? Okay. So this is an application level. Okay. For analysis level, what is the statistical test used when you test the mean difference between pre-test and post-test? So this is now analysis, and of course, given the idea that, okay, the pre-test and post-test. So what's the difference now? Okay, so this is now the example of analysis level of MCQ. So here are the advantages and disadvantages of multiple choice test. The first advantage measures learning outcomes from the knowledge to evaluation level. And really, that's true. No? Disadvantage, time consuming to construct a good item correct. Scoring is highly objective, easy and reliable. Then scores are more reliable than subjective type of test. Okay. And then it measures broad samples of content within a short span of time. And then destructors can provide diagnostic information. And then item analysis can reveal the difficulty of an item and can discriminate the good and poor performing students. So ito yung sinatawag natin na advantages and disadvantages. Now, we have to look at the advantages and disadvantages and use them for us to choose the appropriate assessment tool. Okay, so I think that is the way. So we have to, I have to leave you now, and then the discussion was up until multiple choice, and we will be continuing this one next by the time I will be uploading another material. Okay, thank you so much.